is EWA Radio, and I'm public editor Emily Richmond. In 2014, Chicago Public Schools made the decision to privatize its custodial services and facilities maintenance, a move that was supposed to mean cleaner campuses. But as today's guest will tell us, that's not quite how things worked out. Lauren Fitzpatrick covers education for the Chicago Sun-Times, and her series, Dirty Schools, has produced some big results. She joins us today. Lauren, welcome to EWA Radio.
Hi, thank you so much. This is fun.
What first put you on the story?
In a nutshell, beat reporting and the people who were affected. So I would turn up to board meetings. And I remember the meeting when they decided to privatize the schools and made all the promises. And then I remember meeting after meeting, not even every month, but sporadically, where parents would come and say, hey, my kid's school's dirty. I'm a school council member and we can't get enough janitors. There's no soap in my child's bathroom. So I'd been hearing complaints for a while. And, something happened in December. The district decided to take some action, and word of that got to me. So that was the specific catalyst for getting this particular series started. But this is something I've been trying to pick at for a number of years and just couldn't quite get there.
There's a new word in my vocabulary, at least a new definition for it, and that's the word blitz.
Yes.
Let's talk about what that means in this context.
So blitz inspections, and Chicago Public Schools loves to have names for things, code words. This apparently is something that used to happen all the time. It was just a very detailed kind of cleaning inspection where they'd give the inspector a checklist to go through the kitchen, the bathrooms, the main part of the school, etc. I'm told that it disappeared for the last several years. And then after a pest infestation turned up at an elementary school, the district decided to bring it back. And what was really interesting about this set of forms is that the inspectors decided they were basically going to pretend to be city health inspectors. And they were going to look for the kinds of things that the health inspectors could find violations for and then assess fines for. And they would look at the schools through that lens to have a good sense of what the problems were in the school.
If my understanding is correct, a blitz inspection is only as good as the element of surprise. And there really wasn't one here, was there?
So kind of. The round of blitzes that happened in December were quietly rolled out and only principals were told. A separate set of inspections were done by an outside auditor, a third-party guy that was supposed to keep tabs on how good a job the contractors were doing. And those lack the element of surprise. Word got out in all kinds of ways. And then supplies would show up, extra bodies would show up, and those inspections were very easily passed. The outside inspections were written into the contracts. They said they wanted to know what the vendors were up to. So just once a year, this gentleman would come in and I talked to him. He said he did all the inspections himself. So it would be the same set of eyes and the same set of standards. And he would file these reports that often were cited, though, as I was saying, parents used to come to meetings and complain about school cleanliness. The district's answer was always, but they passed these outside inspections. That auditor says everything is hunky-dory. Therefore, what you're saying is not the truth. What you saw with your own eyes, you didn't. Cracking open what actually was going on with those third-party inspections was, I thought, an important piece of this story. And, I found a couple of janitors who were willing to say on the record, of course we know about these things ahead of time. They told us so we could prepare. I give them a lot of credit and appreciate that they were willing to come forward.
Well, first of all, hunky-dory is a phrase that doesn't get enough play, so I appreciate you rolling that one out for us. But let's back up a second. So you had some janitors who were going to go on the record and talk with you, but also open records were a big part of this story. Let's talk about what you asked for, what you got, how long you had to wait for it.
Okay, so I'm a records hoarder, and I think as a beat reporter, you have to be. There are just certain things that come out at regular times of the year. When big new contracts are passed, those are things you should just automatically ask for. I tend to break my records requests into very specific pieces, emails for one person at a time, not everything all at once, because that'll take forever. And without giving away too many of my secrets to the district, although they probably know this by now, I like to ask for things before I need them so that I have them in place. So big contracts are one of those things for sure. I had some of that stuff already in hand when I became aware of these new blitz inspections. But blitz inspection is such an unusual term that was one of the first records requests I filed. I want copies of the blitz inspections and all of the supporting documents. And then blitz also is an unusual enough word to ask for emails about blitz inspection. So that was one of the next things I did. Oh, this is something else I like to hoard. When someone gets a new job, a big promotion in the district, and they're in the very top level, right away I ask for their work history and their personnel file. So that's something else I just have in my back pocket in case that becomes relevant.
That's a terrific suggestion, to request a personnel file before you think you might need it for new employees. Have it in your back pocket. And that really paid off for you on this story, didn't it?
It did. Yesterday, the head of facilities at Chicago Public Schools resigned very abruptly, effective immediately. And so I certainly could have asked district spokespeople yesterday, when did she start? What did she do before? Has she been promoted? All those kinds of things. But I had her file in my back pocket because I had asked for it when she got the promotion and just already knew these things and didn't have to depend on anybody else.
You mentioned the resignation of the facilities chief. What's been some of the other fallout from your series?
So CPS has agreed to hire 100 more permanent custodians to clean schools starting this summer, and they'll stay on through the fall. And then they're going to bring on an extra 100 custodians to do a whole bunch of super deep cleaning over the summer, hoping that if they start clean by the time kids come back, it'll be a little bit easier to just kind of keep it up. So they've agreed to spend that much more money. Some folks inside of the district have been reassigned to keep better tabs on the vendors, which I think is something that's been lacking since they went to privatize these services. And then folks have just become a lot more aware of what's going on in their kids' schools. And, they're speaking out a lot more about it.
We're talking with Lauren Fitzpatrick of the Chicago Sun-Times about her reporting on the public schools in that city and some really questionable behavior when it comes to keeping them clean. Don't miss an episode of EWA Radio. You never have to. You can find us on your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Your support and feedback will help us grow. Lauren, we want to mention you were an EWA Awards finalist this year for investigative reporting for your coverage of Forrest Claypool, the former Chicago Public Schools CEO. Even though I knew that Chicago was the nation's third largest school district, some of the dollar amounts attached to these contracts are just staggering. I mean, the custodial deal for Sodexo Magic and Aramark, the two companies who were awarded these deals, that's $500 million.
Yes, it's over 3 years. I mean, we have a lot of buildings here in Chicago, and it's supposed to be all of the staff and kind of all of the basic facilities needs that a school will need. But this is also a district that doesn't have unlimited money, and folks frequently complain about what they can't afford to do for kids. So when a giant contract comes up like this, it should just be an automated response to ask what's going on here. It's so much money.
How do you balance covering the business of schooling, what we're talking about now, with curriculum and instruction and teacher workforce and just the daily grind that students in your city are facing?
Poorly? Badly?
Oh, I don't believe that for a moment.
I'm pretty good about balancing it with the daily grinds, major announcements, things that I think parents really need to know, things I think teachers should be aware of. I tend, though, toward money, especially in this district where, again, like kids are constantly being told and parents are being told, we can't afford to do that for your child. So I just think it's extra important here for me and for all of us in Chicago, then to just ask, well, then what are you spending the money on? Is it good for kids? Is it a smart investment? Is it being used efficiently? I know a lot of my stories skew to that aspect of covering schools.
So based on what you found, is there real finger pointing happening here? Is there a paper trail that says one person's to blame, or is this really more about a systemic failure to just keep track of where that money was going and who was doing the job?
I think that it is a little bit more systemic. I mean, even though the woman in charge has resigned recently as part of the fallout from this scandal, privatization started a couple of CEOs ago. It's been intensified by the different folks who've occupied the office. And I think maybe one of the things that CPS has learned is that hiring someone on the outside to take care of things isn't quite enough. And maybe they can do the day-to-day, but they're still going to need someone from the district who's paying the bills to keep tabs on what it is that they're doing and to hold them accountable. So I think there's bigger issues here. I don't think I can just point to like the last CEO and say it was his fault, or even the person who first got this started and say that's where all the blame is. I think it's just been sort of the trend of where the Chicago school district has been going.
I'd like to hear from you some ideas for local reporters who may want to start digging into some of these issues in their own school districts. Let's say I need to go to my editor and make the case here. Why should we care about school facilities?
Oh, I mean, this is like where kids sit and breathe and eat and use bathrooms. And if it's dangerous, I mean, how are you supposed to learn things if the conditions happen to be dangerous? And I'm not saying they are here. I mean, do you really want kids like interacting with mice and poop? And then, like, what is your district spending on its buildings? You know, is it spending smartly? Is it not? Is money that could be going more directly into classrooms being redirected? I think those are important things. I would also say, like, I did a bunch of this work before I really pulled editors in. So I had a very clear, like, this is what I think we need to do now. And here's what I'm still waiting on to get. And now here's where, please, can you give me 48 hours to finish this so you will have something beautiful for your paper?
A story idea I had that I think it's probably not sexy per se, but probably important is to look at districts that are relying on deferred maintenance. So, this became a hot thing during the recession when school districts were strapped for cash. They just kept pushing things off and off. And now schools are pretty decrepit.
Yes. And, chickens come home to roost. So are folks catching up? Are they building new? Are they going back and fixing any of these things? I mean, I hear a lot in CPS that deferred maintenance is part of why it's so hard to keep some of these old buildings clean, because if ceiling tiles are falling down, I mean, that dust is going to be there every morning. If you've got other structural problems, holes in the building, rodents, of course, are going to be able to get in. So I'm hearing more and more about the connection between all the repairs that didn't get made during the super budget crunch years in Chicago and then what we're seeing now.
How important were the connections that you had made just in the daily beat to parents and building that trust to get them to come to you and even to get people like custodians to trust you and open up?
I cannot ever say enough about beat reporting and what it means for people to see you at meetings all the time and see your name on things and see how to contact you. I mean, I've had a number of parents, I saw them, I talked to them personally, who made these complaints and weren't getting anywhere. And then just even in terms of some of the sources I needed to help guide me through what I wanted to be looking for, what else I needed to get my hands on, whether I was being told the whole story by the people authorized to give answers from the district. I mean, all of that led into this reporting. And, I've gone back to meeting sheets to see those are the parents who complained about this all these years ago. Hey, are those schools better? I mean, just this idea that everything you do builds upon what you've done and will lead to you being able to do your job better in the future. There's so much power in beat reporting if you can keep track of what you already know and be able to access it when you need it, which is one of my greatest challenges.
Lauren Fitzpatrick covers public education for the Chicago Sun-Times and joined us from her office in the Windy City. Lauren, thanks for making time for EWA Radio.
Thank you so much. Good luck to you all.
Thank you, everybody. That wraps up another episode for us. If there's a story you want to know more about, drop us a line with radio@ewa.org. The mission of the Education Writers Association is to support the community of education writers, strengthen it, and improve the quality of education coverage. For more than 70 years, EWA has helped reporters get the story right. Have a great week, and thanks for listening.